The first soldier died without a sound. Not because he was attacked. Not because he was wounded. But because the thing watching him from the fog simply stared, and fear stopped his heart. For 50 years, the grave on Hill 47 had remained untouched. 50 years. Through storms, wars, planetary governments, and the collapse of entire star systems, the grave remained exactly as it had been on the day it was built. No one maintained it. No one repaired it. Yet not a single blade of grass grew over it. Not a single stone shifted. And every person who tried to approach after sunset reported seeing glowing eyes in the darkness. Eyes belonging to a creature that should not have existed. A monster. At least that was what the galaxy called it. The world of Karen 4 was once a battlefield. Half a century earlier, humans and alien forces had fought one of the bloodiest wars in known history there. Millions died. Entire cities vanished beneath orbital bombardments. Today, only ruins remained. Most people avoided the planet entirely. Yet the grave remained. A simple stone marker standing alone among endless fields of silver grass. The inscription was worn by time. Only a few words could still be read. Captain Daniel Hayes. Nothing else. No rank honors. No military symbols. Just a name. And according to every record, something guarded it. Something terrifying. Commander Vex Talon of the Galactic Historical Authority stared at the holographic report floating above his desk. 27 expeditions failed? He asked. His assistant nodded nervously. Yes, sir. Failed how? The assistant swallowed. Most teams retreated. 3 disappeared. One team reported seeing a giant creature standing beside the grave before communication was lost. Vex frowned. The reports sounded ridiculous. Ghost stories. Superstitions. Yet too many credible witnesses had reported the same thing. A creature. Massive. Black as night. Covered in scars. Watching. Waiting. Guarding. For 50 years. That was impossible. No biological life form could survive alone for that long. Especially not on a dead battlefield world. Which meant someone or something was hiding the truth. Vex stood. Prepare my shuttle. The assistant looked horrified. Sir, you're going yourself? Someone has to. 3 days later, Vex's ship descended through the gray clouds of Karen 4. The planet looked dead. Broken cities stretched to the horizon. Rusting war machines lay half-buried beneath the soil. The scars of war remained visible even after half a century. As the shuttle landed near Hill 47, silence surrounded them. No birds. No animals. Nothing. The atmosphere felt wrong. As though the planet itself were holding its breath. Vex stepped outside with a small team of armed guards. In the distance stood the grave. Small. Lonely. Almost insignificant. Yet every member of the team felt uneasy looking at it. One guard pointed toward a nearby ridge. Movement. Everyone froze. The sensors showed nothing. Yet for a brief moment, Vex thought he saw a gigantic shadow standing among the ruins. Watching them, then it vanished. The team slowly approached the grave. 20 meters. 15. 10. Nothing happened. Vex almost laughed. Maybe the stories really were nonsense. Then he noticed something. Fresh footprints. Huge footprints. Pressed deep into the ground. As though some enormous creature had been standing beside the grave only moments earlier. The tracks circled the grave repeatedly. Like a patrol route. The guards exchanged nervous glances. One of them whispered, "Commander, something's here." Before Vex could answer, a deep growl echoed across the battlefield. The sound was so low it vibrated through their bones. Every soldier instantly raised their weapons. The fog thickened, and 2 glowing amber eyes slowly appeared within the darkness. Watching, waiting, the monster had returned, and it did not look happy to see visitors. The glowing eyes never blinked. Commander Vex Talon stood frozen as the massive shape emerged from the fog surrounding Captain Daniel Hayes' grave. Every soldier aimed their weapons. Yet none of them fired, because the creature before them was unlike anything they had ever seen. It stood nearly 4 meters tall. Its body was covered in black armor-like scales scarred by countless battles. Long claw marks crossed its chest. One of its ears was torn almost completely away. Its left shoulder carried what looked like an ancient burn from a plasma cannon. This was not a predator. This was a survivor, a veteran. And despite its terrifying appearance, Vex noticed something strange. The creature wasn't looking at them. It was looking at the grave, almost protectively, as if placing itself between them and the stone marker. The deep growl continued. A warning, not an attack. One nervous soldier raised his rifle higher. Permission to fire, sir? No, Vex said immediately. The soldier stared at him. Sir, that thing could kill all of us. Maybe. Vex kept his eyes on the creature. But it hasn't. The monster slowly stepped forward. The ground trembled beneath its weight. Several soldiers backed away instinctively. The creature stopped beside the grave and lowered its enormous head. For a moment, silence filled the battlefield. Then something unbelievable happened. The monster gently nudged the stone marker with its nose, like an animal checking on a sleeping friend. The gesture lasted only seconds. Yet it changed everything. Vex felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't guarding territory. This wasn't defending a nest. This was personal. Very personal. Suddenly one of the younger soldiers panicked. Perhaps it was fear. Perhaps nerves. Whatever the reason, he squeezed the trigger. A plasma bolt shot across the field. The blast struck the ground inches from the creature's feet. The monster reacted instantly. Its roar exploded across the battlefield. The sound shook nearby ruins. Birds hidden in distant structures burst into the sky. The soldiers stumbled backward. Several nearly dropped their weapons. The creature lunged. For a split second, everyone thought they were dead. But instead of attacking the team, the beast placed itself directly over the grave, protecting it, shielding it. Its massive body covered the entire marker. The realization hit Vex immediately. It wasn't afraid for itself. It was afraid for the grave. The monster's amber eyes burned with fury. Not because someone had threatened it. Because someone had threatened Daniel Hayes. Even after 50 years. The creature slowly lowered its head and emitted a strange sound. Not a roar. Not a growl. A low mournful rumble. Almost sad. Almost grieving. Vex activated a recording drone. The machine floated closer. As it scanned the creature, ancient military archives began comparing genetic patterns. Suddenly alarms flashed across Vex's wrist display. Match found. His eyes widened. No! The database identified the species instantly. A species believed extinct. A species once considered one of the deadliest life forms in the galaxy. The designation appeared on screen. Craxian War Beast. Vex felt his stomach tighten. During the Human-Craxian War, these creatures had been engineered as living weapons. Entire battalions feared them. Most were destroyed before the war ended. According to official records, none survived. Yet one clearly had. And it had remained here for 50 years, guarding a human grave. The question was why. Then the drone discovered something even more shocking. Embedded beneath layers of scars on the creature's neck was an old metallic collar. Military issue. Ancient. Damaged. But still partially readable. Vex zoomed in on the faded inscription. His heart nearly stopped. Only 2 words remained visible. Buddy. The soldiers looked at each other in confusion. The monster glanced toward the collar. Then toward the grave. And for the first time, Vex saw something impossible in the eyes of a creature built for war. Sorrow. The beast wasn't guarding Captain Daniel Hayes because it had been ordered to. It was guarding him because it had loved him. But what kind of bond could exist between a human soldier and a monster created to kill? And why had Buddy stayed here alone for half a century? As the sun disappeared beyond the ruined horizon, the answer began approaching from the darkness. An old figure carrying a lantern. Someone who should not have been alive. Someone who whispered one sentence that made every soldier freeze. You're 50 years too late. Because the monster has been waiting for Daniel to come back. The old man stepped into the fading light, carrying a rusted lantern. His back was bent with age. His hair was white, Yet the moment Buddy saw him, the massive war beast stopped growling. The creature lowered its head respectfully, as if greeting an old friend. Commander Vex stared in disbelief. "Who are you?" The old man smiled sadly. "My name is Elias Mercer." The name triggered several military records in Vex's memory. Elias Mercer, one of the last surviving veterans of the Human-Craxian War. That alone should have been impossible. The man had to be nearly 90 years old. Elias slowly walked toward the grave. Buddy moved aside to let him pass. The old veteran knelt beside the stone marker and gently brushed away dust. His weathered fingers traced the faded name. Captain Daniel Hayes. For several moments, nobody spoke. Finally, Vex broke the silence. "You know what happened here?" Elias nodded. "I was there." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. Vex stepped closer. "Then tell us." The old man looked toward Buddy. The giant beast had settled beside the grave once again. Watching, waiting, listening, and then Elias began. 50 years earlier, Cairn 4 was burning. The war had reached its worst stage. Entire armies were being wiped out. Neither side cared about mercy anymore. Only victory. The Craxians had unleashed their newest weapon. Genetically engineered war beasts. Creatures designed for one purpose. Kill. No fear. No compassion. No hesitation. Among them was a young beast designated KRX 1138. The soldiers gave it another name. The monster. Every battle ended the same way. Bodies. Blood. Destruction. The creature became infamous across the galaxy. Entire units fled when they heard it was nearby. Then Captain Daniel Hayes encountered it. The battle took place inside a ruined city. Daniel's platoon had been ordered to eliminate the beast. Instead, they found something unexpected. The creature had fallen into an underground reactor shaft. Its leg was shattered. Metal debris pinned its body. For the first time in its life, the monster couldn't fight. The other soldiers raised their weapons. "Finish it. It killed hundreds. It deserves worse." But Daniel didn't fire. He stared at the wounded beast. The creature stared back. Neither moved. Neither attacked. Then Daniel lowered his rifle. His squad thought he was insane. "What are you doing?" Daniel walked forward. Slowly, carefully. The beast growled weakly, but it couldn't move. Daniel reached into his pack. The squad expected a grenade. Instead, he pulled out a water container. The soldiers looked horrified. "Captain!" Daniel ignored them. He placed the water beside the creature. The beast didn't understand. No one had ever shown it kindness before. Its entire existence had been pain, commands, and violence. Daniel simply smiled. "Easy there, Buddy." The word slipped out naturally. Buddy. The name stuck immediately. The creature blinked. Confused. For the first time in its life, nobody looked at it with fear. Nobody looked at it with hatred. Daniel looked at it like it mattered. Like it was alive. Like it was more than a weapon. Over the next several days, Daniel secretly returned. Each time bringing food, water, medical supplies, and every visit ended the same way. "How are you doing today, Buddy?" Slowly, the impossible happened. The monster stopped growling when Daniel approached. Then one day it allowed him to touch its head. The entire platoon watched in stunned silence. A creature responsible for countless deaths sat calmly beside a human soldier. No chains, no orders, just trust. The friendship should never have existed. Yet somehow it did. But wars do not allow happy endings. And far above the battlefield, a new fleet had arrived. One carrying orders that would change both of their lives forever. Orders that would force Daniel to make an impossible choice. A choice that would eventually place his name on this lonely grave. As Elias finished speaking, Buddy slowly rested his head against the stone marker. The giant beast closed its eyes, almost as if remembering, almost as if reliving the moment. And for the first time, Commander Vex realized something terrifying. Buddy wasn't guarding the grave because of duty. Buddy was guarding it because 50 years later, he still missed his best friend. The war was ending. After years of destruction, Both sides were exhausted. Entire fleets had been reduced to wreckage. Worlds had burned. Civilizations had fallen. And on Karen 4, Captain Daniel Hayes believed he might finally have a future beyond the battlefield. A future where Buddy could live in peace. He was wrong. The orders arrived at dawn. Daniel sat inside the command bunker when the transmission appeared. The message came directly from Galactic High Command. Its contents were short, cold, and absolute. All Craxian war beasts are to be terminated immediately. No exceptions. No negotiations. No survivors. Daniel reread the order several times. His stomach sank. Outside, Buddy was resting near the camp perimeter, completely unaware that the galaxy had just signed his death warrant. One of Daniel's officers entered moments later. "Captain, you've seen the order?" Daniel nodded silently. The officer looked uncomfortable. "The execution squad arrives tomorrow." For several seconds, Daniel said nothing. Then he asked the question nobody expected. "Why?" The officer laughed bitterly. "Because they're afraid." Daniel already knew that. The war beasts had become symbols of terror. Even if peace came, people would never trust them. The governments feared what might happen if even one survived. So they chose the easy solution. Kill them all. Daniel looked out the bunker window. Buddy was lying beneath the sunlight. For the first time in his life, the creature looked peaceful. Not a weapon. Not a monster. Just a living being. And humanity wanted him dead. That evening Daniel walked outside. Buddy immediately stood and approached. The giant creature gently nudged Daniel's shoulder. The familiar greeting made Daniel smile despite the pain in his chest. "You always know when something's wrong, don't you?" Buddy made a low rumbling sound. Daniel sat beside him. For a long time neither moved. The setting sun painted the battlefield in gold and red. Daniel remembered their first meeting. The wounded creature trapped beneath debris. The fear in its eyes. The loneliness. The way it had slowly learned trust. He remembered every battle they had survived together. Every life Buddy had saved. Every soldier the creature had protected. Because over time, something incredible had happened. Buddy stopped being a weapon. He became family. The next morning, the execution squad arrived. 10 heavily armed soldiers stepped from a transport shuttle. Commander Reichel led the unit. His orders were clear. Kill the beast. Immediately, Buddy sensed danger the moment they approached. The creature moved closer to Daniel. Not aggressively. Defensively. Reichel raised his weapon. "Stand aside, Captain." Daniel didn't move. "Negative." The commander frowned. "You're interfering with military orders." Daniel folded his arms. "I'm protecting my friend." The soldiers exchanged shocked looks. Friend? The word sounded absurd. Yet Daniel meant every syllable. Reichel's patience vanished. This thing murdered thousands. Daniel's expression hardened. So did the war. Silence filled the camp. Nobody knew how to respond. Finally Reichel pointed his rifle directly at Buddy. "Move!" Buddy growled. The soldiers raised their weapons. The atmosphere became explosive. One mistake, one shot, and a massacre would begin. Then suddenly alarms erupted across the entire base. Emergency sirens screamed. Communication officers ran from the command center. Panic spread everywhere. Daniel grabbed a radio. The message that came through made his blood run cold. Craxian fleet detected. Everyone froze. The war was supposed to be over. Yet hundreds of enemy warships had just emerged from hyperspace. Not to surrender. To destroy everything. The peace negotiations had been a trap. The largest battle of the war was about to begin. And Karen 4 stood directly in the enemy's path. Commander Reichel looked toward the sky. His face turned pale. The sensors showed impossible numbers. Thousands of enemy vessels. Enough firepower to erase the planet. Human forces had no chance. No reinforcements. No escape. Nothing. The execution order no longer mattered. Because everyone on the planet was about to die. As orbital bombardments began lighting up the heavens, Buddy suddenly looked toward the distant mountains. His ears twitched. His eyes narrowed. Then he did something strange. He started running. Not away from the battle. Toward something hidden beyond the horizon. Something only he seemed to know existed. Daniel stared after him. "What are you doing, buddy?" Moments later, an ancient secret buried beneath Karen 4 began to awaken. A secret capable of changing the entire war. A secret that would force Daniel to make the greatest sacrifice of his life. The sky was on fire. Enemy warships filled the heavens above Karen 4 like a swarm of metal locusts. Explosions lit up the clouds. Orbital strikes hammered the surface. Human defenses were collapsing. Every officer knew the truth. The war was over. Humanity had lost. Yet while soldiers scrambled to prepare for the final assault, Buddy continued running toward the distant mountains. Commander Reichel shouted after him, "Forget the beast. Get to your battle stations." But Daniel wasn't listening. Something inside him said Buddy wasn't fleeing. The creature was trying to show them something. Daniel climbed into a transport vehicle. "Follow him." Several soldiers exchanged confused looks. One finally asked, "Captain, are you seriously trusting a war beast right now?" Daniel started the engine. "I trust him more than most politicians." Moments later, the vehicle raced across the battlefield. Buddy remained far ahead, moving with incredible speed despite his massive size. Explosions shook the ground around them. Enemy dropships were already entering the atmosphere. Time was running out. After nearly 30 minutes, Buddy reached the mountains. The creature disappeared into a narrow canyon. Daniel and his team followed. What they discovered left everyone speechless. Hidden within the rock face was a gigantic metal structure. Ancient, massive, buried beneath centuries of dust and debris. It looked older than the war itself. Older than most civilizations. The entrance stretched hundreds of meters high. Alien symbols covered the walls. Commander Reichel stared in disbelief. "What is this place?" Nobody knew. Yet Buddy clearly did. The creature approached a sealed door. Without hesitation, he placed one enormous claw against a strange symbol. The entire mountain shook. Ancient machinery awakened. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. Blue lights flickered to life for the first time in thousands of years. Then the doors began opening. Slowly, reluctantly, as though the structure itself had been sleeping. A cold wind rushed from the darkness beyond. The soldiers aimed their weapons. Daniel stepped forward first. Inside lay an enormous underground facility. Rows of forgotten machines stretched into the distance. Towering reactors hummed faintly. Ancient star maps glowed above shattered control stations. The place looked abandoned, yet somehow still alive. One technician gasped, "Captain!" Daniel followed his gaze. At the center of the facility stood something enormous. A weapon. Not a ship. Not a cannon. Something far bigger. A planetary defense system. One powerful enough to protect entire star systems. The technician scanned the machinery. His face turned pale. "This is precursor technology." The room fell silent. Every civilization knew the legends. The precursors were an ancient race that vanished long before recorded history. Their technology was considered almost magical. And somehow Karen 4 had been hiding one of their greatest creations. Suddenly a hologram activated. Ancient text appeared above the machine. The translation software worked frantically. Finally the message became clear. Guardian protocol activated. Genetic key verified. Everyone stared at Buddy. The machine had responded to him. Not to humans. Not to the soldiers. To Buddy. Another message appeared. Authorized Guardian species confirmed. Daniel's eyes widened. Guardian species? The technician looked shocked. "You mean the war beasts weren't created by the Craxians?" "No," Daniel whispered. "They found them." The truth hit everyone at once. Buddy's species had never been monsters. They had been protectors. Ancient guardians left behind by the precursors. The Craxians had simply captured them and turned them into weapons. Buddy had spent his entire life being blamed for crimes that were never his choice. Before anyone could speak, a new alarm erupted throughout the facility. Warning lights flashed red. The hologram changed. A countdown appeared. Planetary defense system critical failure. Manual activation required. The technician quickly analyzed the data. Then his face turned white. Captain. Daniel already knew he wasn't going to like the answer. What is it? The technician swallowed hard. The defense system can destroy the enemy fleet. Everyone sighed with relief. Then the technician continued. But the activation chamber is directly connected to the planetary reactor. Daniel felt cold. Meaning? The technician looked away. Anyone who activates it won't survive. Silence filled the facility. Outside, enemy ships continued descending toward the planet. Humanity had one chance left. One. And it required a sacrifice. Slowly, Daniel looked at Buddy. Buddy looked back. The creature seemed to understand. As if he already knew what Daniel was thinking. As if he knew what was coming. And for the first time since they met, Buddy looked afraid. The activation chamber stood at the center of the ancient facility. Beyond its massive doors lay the only thing capable of saving humanity. And a death sentence for whoever entered. No one spoke. The countdown continued above them. 14 minutes until planetary collapse. Enemy fleets were already entering firing range. Soon there would be nothing left to save. Daniel stared at the chamber. Then at Buddy. The giant creature stepped forward and placed itself between Daniel and the entrance. The meaning was obvious. Even without words, Buddy would go. Not Daniel. The war beast let out a low rumble. Almost as if saying, "I've got this." Daniel smiled sadly. "You really think I'm letting you do that?" Buddy growled softly. The creature nudged Daniel backward. Several soldiers watched in stunned silence. Neither one wanted the other to die. Commander Reichel finally stepped forward. "Captain, if the beast activates it, humanity survives." Daniel turned toward him. "And Buddy dies." Reichel hesitated. The answer was clear. Yes. Daniel looked back at his friend. The creature had saved countless lives. Protected entire platoons. Discovered the facility. And now he was willing to sacrifice himself to save a species that feared him. A species that wanted him executed only hours earlier. Daniel felt ashamed. Not of Buddy. Of humanity. He placed a hand against Buddy's scarred face. The giant beast immediately became still. The same way he always had. Like an oversized loyal companion waiting for instructions. "Listen to me, Buddy." The creature watched him carefully. "You spent your whole life being used by other people." Buddy lowered his head. "You don't owe anyone anything." Another soft rumble. Daniel smiled. "But me." He swallowed hard. "I owe you everything." The countdown reached 12 minutes. Outside, explosions shook the mountains. Pieces of rock crashed from the ceiling. The battle was getting closer. Daniel suddenly removed his military insignia. Then his sidearm. Then his command badge. One by one he handed them to Commander Reichel. The officer's eyes widened. "No." Daniel nodded. "Take care of them." "No. That's an order." The commander looked devastated. "Captain." Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Somebody has to activate the system." Reichel's voice broke. "Not you." Daniel smiled sadly. "It has to be." Buddy immediately realized what was happening. The creature's eyes widened. For the first time since anyone had known him, Buddy panicked. He blocked the chamber entrance, roaring, shaking the facility. Not in anger, in desperation. Daniel had seen Buddy fight armies, face tanks, survive orbital bombardments. Yet now the giant beast looked terrified, because he was about to lose the only friend he had ever known. Daniel stepped closer. "It's okay." Buddy shook his head violently. The creature grabbed Daniel's uniform gently between his claws, trying to stop him, trying to keep him safe, just as Daniel had always protected him. The sight brought tears to several soldiers' eyes. Daniel placed both hands against Buddy's face. "Remember when I found you in that reactor pit?" Buddy became still. "I made you a promise." A quiet rumble escaped the creature. Daniel smiled. "I told you nobody would hurt you again." For a moment neither moved. Then Daniel leaned his forehead against Buddy's. A gesture they had shared for years. Friends. Family. Brothers. I need you to do something for me. Buddy watched him. Live. The creature froze. Daniel's voice trembled. Live for both of us. The countdown reached 8 minutes. Daniel stepped away. Buddy immediately tried to follow. The soldiers restrained him. Not easily, but enough. The creature roared. Fought. Struggled. The sound echoed through the entire facility. A sound of heartbreak. Daniel looked back one last time. Buddy's eyes met his. And for the first time in 50 years, the giant war beast cried. A single tear rolled down his scarred face. Daniel smiled through his own tears. Then he entered the chamber. The doors began closing. Slowly, relentlessly, Buddy lunged forward. Too late. The massive doors sealed shut, separating them forever. As alarms screamed and energy surged through the facility, Daniel's final voice echoed through the communication system. 3 simple words. Words Buddy would remember for the rest of his life. Goodbye, Buddy. Moments later, the planetary defense system activated, and the sky itself exploded. The sky turned white. For one terrifying moment, everyone on Cairn 4 thought the planet itself had exploded. Then the ancient defense system unleashed its power. Massive beams of blue energy erupted from hidden towers across the world. They pierced the clouds, crossed the atmosphere, and struck the enemy fleet. One ship vanished, then 10, then 100. The heavens became a storm of fire. Enemy vessels shattered like glass. Entire battle groups disappeared within seconds. No shield could stop the ancient weapon. No fleet could survive it. Within minutes, the largest enemy armada in galactic history ceased to exist. Humanity was saved. But victory felt empty, because one man had paid the price. When the battle ended, rescue teams rushed into the underground facility. They searched for survivors. They found none. The activation chamber had been destroyed completely. There was no body, no remains, nothing. Only Captain Daniel Hayes' command badge, fused into the floor by unimaginable heat. Commander Reichel stared at the badge for a long time. Then he quietly removed his cap. The war was over, but Daniel was gone. Behind him, Buddy sat motionless. The giant creature had not moved since the doors closed. Hours passed, then days. Still he remained there, waiting, watching the destroyed chamber, as if expecting Daniel to walk back out. At first the soldiers tried comforting him. They brought food, water, medical care. Buddy ignored all of it. His eyes remained fixed on the ruined entrance. Waiting, always waiting. After 3 days, Commander Reichel finally approached. He knelt beside the giant beast. Daniel isn't coming back. Buddy didn't react. Reichel swallowed. He saved us. Silence. He saved everyone. Still nothing. Then Buddy slowly stood. For one hopeful moment, the soldiers thought he understood. Instead, the creature walked past them, left the facility, and disappeared into the night. Months later, a memorial was built on Hill 47, the highest point overlooking the battlefield where Daniel had fought. A simple grave, exactly as Daniel would have wanted. No giant monument, no golden statues, just a stone marker, and a name, Captain Daniel Hayes. The ceremony attracted thousands. Military leaders, politicians, veterans, citizens from dozens of worlds. Everyone came to honor the man who had saved humanity. The speeches lasted hours. The crowd eventually departed. Night fell, and then Buddy arrived. Alone, the giant creature approached the grave carefully, almost nervously, as if afraid of disturbing someone sleeping. He sniffed the stone marker, then sat beside it, waiting. The next morning, workers found him there. The following morning, he was still there. A week later, still there. A month later, still there. People assumed he would eventually leave. He never did. Years passed. Rainstorms came. Buddy stayed. Winters arrived. Buddy stayed. Wild predators approached. Buddy drove them away. Treasure hunters attempted to rob the grave. They fled screaming. Some claimed the monster chased them for kilometers. Others swore glowing eyes watched them from the darkness. The legends spread throughout the galaxy. Children told stories about the Guardian of Hill 47. Most believed the stories were myths. The few who visited learned otherwise, because every single night, Buddy returned to the grave. Every single night. Decades passed. The creature grew older. Scars multiplied. His movements became slower. Yet he never abandoned his post. Never. The reason was discovered 47 years later. A young explorer accidentally recorded Buddy while hiding nearby. The footage shocked the galaxy. At sunset, the old war beast approached the grave carrying something in his mouth. A faded military blanket. Daniel's blanket. The same one he used during the war. Buddy carefully placed it beside the stone, then lowered himself next to it. The creature looked at the grave and made a soft rumbling sound. The recording equipment enhanced the audio. Experts analyzed it for months. Eventually, they translated part of the communication pattern. The result broke hearts across the galaxy. Every evening for nearly 50 years, Buddy had been repeating the same message. The same words. The same hope. Again and again. Waiting. Always waiting. The translated phrase read, "I'm here, Daniel. I'm still here." Commander Vex felt tears in his eyes as Elias finished the story. Nearby, Buddy rested beside the grave. Old, scarred, tired, yet still standing guard. Still keeping his promise. Still waiting for the friend who never came back. But Elias wasn't finished. Because there was one final secret. One truth nobody had ever discovered. Not even Buddy. A secret hidden beneath Daniel's grave for 50 years. And tonight, that secret was about to reveal itself. The night was silent. A cool wind moved through the silver grass surrounding Hill 47. Commander Vex, Elias Mercer, and the soldiers stood quietly beside Captain Daniel Hayes' grave. Nearby, Buddy rested in his usual place. The old war beast looked exhausted. 50 years of storms. 50 years of battles against time. 50 years of waiting. Yet he remained beside the grave, faithful to the very end. Elias slowly stepped forward. "There was one thing Daniel asked me to do." Vex looked at him. "What thing?" The old veteran reached into his coat. From inside he removed a small metal device. Ancient. Dust-covered. Its surface carried Daniel's military identification code. Elias smiled sadly. "I promised him I wouldn't activate this unless Buddy survived long enough to see it." The soldiers stared in confusion. "See what?" Elias knelt beside the grave, then pressed the device against the stone marker. For a moment nothing happened. Then the earth began to shake. Blue light erupted beneath the grave. Ancient mechanisms awakened below the hill. Buddy immediately stood. His tired eyes locked onto the glowing stone. A hidden compartment slowly rose from the ground. Inside rested a small holographic projector. Untouched for 50 years. Waiting. Just like Buddy. The projector activated. Static flickered. A human figure appeared. Young. Smiling. Alive. Captain Daniel Hayes. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Even Buddy froze completely. For the first time in half a century, he was seeing Daniel again. The hologram smiled warmly. "Hey, Buddy." The giant war beast trembled. A low sound escaped his throat. Not a roar. Not a growl. A broken sound of disbelief. Daniel's recorded image sat on an old supply crate. Exactly as he had looked during the war. "Well, if you're seeing this, then you ignored every order I ever gave you." Several soldiers laughed through tears. The hologram smiled. "Which honestly doesn't surprise me." Buddy slowly approached. One careful step at a time. Like he was afraid the image would disappear. Daniel's voice softened. "You know, everyone called you a monster." The war beast lowered his head. But they were wrong. Silence covered the hill. The hologram continued. "You weren't a monster. You weren't a weapon. You weren't an experiment. You were my friend. Tears filled Commander Vex's eyes. Nearby, even hardened soldiers were crying openly. Daniel smiled. And friends don't get forgotten. Buddy sat directly in front of the projector, watching, listening, remembering. The hologram looked toward the stars. When I activated the defense system, I knew I wasn't coming back. The words hit everyone hard. Even after 50 years, the pain remained. But I wasn't afraid. Daniel chuckled softly. Want to know why? The hologram pointed toward Buddy. Because I knew someone would keep watch. The old war beast's eyes never left the image. Daniel's smile became emotional. Buddy, if you're still there after all these years. His voice trembled. Then you've already done enough. The battlefield became completely silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Daniel leaned forward. You don't have to wait anymore. Buddy's body stiffened. The hologram continued. You kept your promise. Now let me keep mine. For a moment Daniel simply smiled. The same smile Buddy had seen thousands of times. Then he said the words hidden for half a century. The words meant only for his friend. No matter how far apart we are, no matter how much time passes, I'll always be proud of you, Buddy. The giant war beast closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down his scarred face. Then another. Then another. 50 years of grief. 50 years of loneliness. 50 years of waiting. Finally released. The hologram began fading. Daniel gave one final salute. Thank you for saving me. Buddy looked up, confused, because Daniel had saved him, not the other way around. The hologram smiled one last time. As long as someone remembers us, neither of us is truly gone. And then the recording ended. The light vanished. Darkness returned to Hill 47. For several minutes nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Then something happened. Buddy slowly lay down beside the grave, exactly where he always had. The old creature rested his head against the stone marker. A peaceful expression appeared on his face. For the first time in 50 years, he looked content. The moon climbed higher into the sky. The soldiers quietly stepped back. Elias wiped away tears. Commander Vex looked toward Buddy. He's sleeping. Elias nodded gently. Yes. Minutes passed. Then hours. Buddy never moved again. The faithful guardian had finally completed his watch. He passed away beside his best friend. Exactly where he wanted to be. Years later, visitors from across the galaxy traveled to Hill 47. Not to see a hero's grave, but two graves, side by side. One marked Captain Daniel Hayes, the other, Buddy. And beneath both names, a single inscription was carved into stone. Friendship is stronger than fear, because in the end, the galaxy never remembered the monster. It remembered the friend. If you enjoyed this emotional HFY journey, don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow for more unforgettable stories of humanity, courage, sacrifice, and friendship among the stars.